centers and thank you, over the years to ensure that you all have interventions that are intended to reduce the transmission, omission, of and care and support of not only HIV, STDs, but also behavioral health. So it's my excitement to share some of the strategies that I have used over the years to talk about facilitation and to talk about the way in which we can make impactful presentations within your community health centers. As I mentioned, the training is recorded and you'll receive a copy afterwards. If for some reason you're disconnected, please log back in using those same credentials provided to you during registration or the Outlook calendar invitation. As the leader of the training center, it is my obligation to provide you with a learning environment based on psychological safety, a space where you can set the necessary context for you to speak your truth as freely as possible. I'm going to ask you to be as present as possible because we'll look at some videos. We also will take some of the concepts we've learned in order to and participate in a breakout room. So I hope that you've not joined as a group, but as individuals, because we want to make sure that when you go out into those breakout rooms, that we provide the space in order for you to actively engage within that environment. While here, I encourage camera use. I'd like to see you and know that I'm not alone, but if you can't, I understand. We ask you to stay muted to limit background noise. And notice that cameras, and use those cameras and those microphones freely when you're in that breakout space. I'm going to ask you also, for the sake of being able to take track of who's in attendance, so we can make sure you get those videos, to make sure that your proper name is showing up on that screen. Take some time to look at the name you have logged in under, update it, because I may also reach out to you. I may acknowledge you. I may ask you some clarifying questions, and I want to make sure we know who's here. During our time together, I'm definitely going to include a Q&A. If you have any questions during the course of the presentation, you can feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself, whatever it is. I will make sure to acknowledge you and clarify any questions that you may have. I also wanted to notice that if you don't feel comfortable utilizing the unmuting yourself and you would rather use the chat box, my colleagues are on the line, Caro and Aisha, who I don't have the chat box up, but I will for the sake of you being able to communicate with you. I'm going to open it. As a matter of fact, I am going to open it now because I want you to greet one another. Say hi if you haven't had a chance to. We definitely want to hear from you during the course of today. I'm going to make every effort to answer any question, and if any reason we run out of time, I will collect questions and make sure that they're included in post-training communications as well. So you have plenty of time to express your curiosities, to answer your curiosities, to get some response, and to make sure that you have everything you need as a part of participating today. So with that, we're going to switch to our PowerPoints, to the presentation for today. Thank you, Aisha. And in addition to that post-training correspondence, I also want to make sure that you be sure to check your junk mail folder. I noticed that some of the communications that we send from the training center end up in your junk mail folders. And I want to make sure that if you don't receive anything, that you know that there's that possibility that your spam filters and other security software may have intercepted the communication. So just be advised to just check your junk mail folders as well as your inboxes. So again, we have the facilitation and presentation skills workshop that has been adapted. This training has been adapted since the beginning of the pandemic. It was created prior to the pandemic and drafted with myself and our colleagues from Expert Effect, which is a high performance coaching HR organization that we partner with a great deal to provide professional development, as well as consult on expertise in HR and to work with us with when we work in groups and cohorts with our community health centers and membership. So with that, I want to just go over, I want to start with the fact that I want to acknowledge, let me start with an acknowledgement that presenting and facilitation can be nerve-wracking. It can be something that is driven emotionally. It can be something that feels stressful and overwhelming. It's sort of like that experience for some of us who've had to take speech classes in order to graduate college. It's, it's working through this muscle of feeling prepared to sit with other people and know that you are the expert in that moment and people are learning from you. So we're going to take some time to make sure that you know that sometimes they don't go right. They don't go well. You don't feel good about them. And that's okay. Because discomfort is a place of learning. It's a place of growth and opportunity. And I have not done well as well. And I have had presentations that haven't gone well. And by that I mean I met with someone, we agreed to what I would talk about. We agreed to sit together and push out all the materials that needed to be done. I did research. I gathered everything. I created this amazing PowerPoint. I created this agenda for everyone to follow. And then I tanked. And by tanking, I got so overwhelmed in my fear that I almost cried. My stomach started hurting. And then I looked up and realized that I was presenting off of the wrong PowerPoint the entire time. So just know that stuff happens and it's okay because this is, again, a learning space and an opportunity for us to combat any of those feelings that we may have and to practice self-forgiveness because sometimes it's going to go great and sometimes not so much, but you will always learn as a facilitator. Next slide. So with that being said, I want to have you use your emoticons, your reaction buttons, or whatever you have on at the bottom of your screen if you have your menus up, or you can hit the chat. I'd like to have one word or an emotion that pops up for you when you think about facilitating or presentation for a group of, say, 20 people. What does that experience feel like for you? You can use the reaction buttons, or you can definitely put it in chat. I have that up. What comes up for you? One word, emotion, or that comes to mind when thinking of presenting or facilitating to a group? I see you. Thank you. Malik, yeah. Stiffness. I see someone gets excited. Someone looks like they're smiling. Someone is sweating. Yeah, absolutely. Stress. Yeah, I got another smile. Look at that. Someone's got it down. Look at that. I see the sunlight. I see the sunglasses and yes, stress. Yes, I see that anxiety. I see that anxiety, Jesus. I see you, Melissa and Wendy. Yeah, the snark. I got you. I see that. Awesome. So it is normal for all of those things to come up. I have probably experienced some of those in the last couple of days, even thinking about doing this presentation, because what I want to do is to share from you from a peer's perspective that it is okay to have all of those things and to give you some tips and tricks to think about as you prepare for your next one. So I'm going to ask you, using the chat or your emoticons, whatever, what key skills can we cover today that will lessen those negative emotions or those emotions that popped up for you? I see I have a couple experts in the room, but I want to hear what are those skills that we can cover today that will lessen those negative or fearful emotions that can come up for you. You can feel free to take yourself off mute as well. Breathing. Breathing helps.
Hi, this is Araceli from Central City. I think for me is getting stuck or stuttering.
Yeah, stuck or stuttering, yes, absolutely. Breathing, how to keep, yeah, stuck or stuttering. I do it. You may hear me stutter during the course of this presentation. And it's really around checking in with you. It's really around checking in with you. So we'll definitely talk about that. Practice makes perfect. I see that. How to keep the audience engaged. Definitely, I see that as well.
This is Ty from Out Here Sexual Health. I
Hi,
would say
Ty.
for me, probably nice to see you, Tracy. I would say
Always.
for me specifically, not paying attention to not interaction, but more so like when I'm presenting, not looking at people's facial expressions or like looking at sidebar conversations as
Mhm.
to like, throw me off.
Yeah, so really not necessarily being in tune with the experience of other people in the room because you might be wanting to get through it. Does that sound right, Ty?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. I hear that. Sometimes it's hard to know where your audience sits and how they're and where they are. But a part of preparing for these presentations is actually thinking about who you're presenting to, what you're trying to present to them, and how to, and once you know your audience, being able to know that there may be uh, things that are, you may miss people. Oh, I see other comment thoughts coming in. See, stammer, stammer. It is me. I want you to say here that it is me. I use filler words sometimes. I stammer. Sometimes I check out. Those are survival skills in the moment. I'm going to practice with you and share with you what it takes for me to move beyond that and to be able to help you be able to hopefully feel in a better confidence space or at least introduce you to some skills that you can adopt and adapt to that will help you with that. Using filler words, we'll talk about those definitely. And computer malfunctions, absolutely. So with computer malfunctions, I see that it's important to have a production team, which is why I have my colleagues Carl and Aisha here. Because as the facilitator, you should not be thinking about the computer at all. You should be thinking about what you want to say and how you're going to say it and focusing on those things. So we definitely can include that as well. And if I don't, hold me accountable. Reach back and say, hey, I didn't hear that part because I want to make sure that I meet all your expectations today. Okay. So with that being said, we'll go to our next slide. So today we'll look at the key skills that can lessen those emotions. So we'll give you, as I said, some public speaking tips, some facilitation tips. We'll even review what's the difference between the two. We'll talk about engaging presentations using PowerPoint. We also will give you some logistics management, some some key ideas for you as you're preparing for those presentations. In your chat box, if you can see them, is a file for you to download. That file is a skeleton of this presentation, and it allows you to be able to capture notes as we go along. So if you have the capacity to reach into your chat box and download that file, there's a place there for you to be able to take notes that are unique to this course and use that as you need to in the future. A copy of that document will also be included in post-training communications if you're unable to download it. I know sometimes that's not possible, but we definitely will make sure that you have it. All right, so with that, most of you are probably familiar with TED Talks. Next slide. Most of you are probably familiar with TED Talks. They're really these short, powerful, engaging talks that are usually less than 20 minutes that feel like they come from the best public speakers in the world or people who have just been prepared in a way that the rest of us are just striving to reach. So we're going to watch a short segment of the second most popular TED Talk from a lady executive named Amy Cuddy. Amy Cuddy is the author of a best-selling book called Presence. As you watch the video, I want you to pay special attention to what she does and says that makes her one of the best public speakers of all time. After this, we're going to make sure that we're going to connect back. I'm going to invite Aisha to start this video, and we're only going to watch maybe the first minute and a half. Yeah, keep going. If it's a little loud, turn down your speakers on your computer as well.
So I want to start by offering you a free no-tech life hack. And all it requires of you is this, that you change your posture for 2 minutes. But before I give it away, I want to ask you to right now do a little audit of your body and what you're doing with your body. So how many of you are sort of making yourselves smaller? Maybe you're hunching, crossing your legs, maybe wrapping your ankles. Sometimes we hold on to our arms like this. Sometimes we spread out. I see you. So I want you to pay attention to what you're doing right now. We're going to come back to that in a few minutes, and I'm hoping that if you sort of learn to tweak this a little bit, it could significantly change the way your life unfolds. So we're really fascinated with body language, and we're particularly interested in other people's body language. You know, we're interested in, like, you know, an awkward interaction or a smile or a contemptuous glance or maybe a very awkward wink or maybe even something like a handshake.
Here they are arriving at number 10 and look at this lucky policeman gets to shake hands with the President of the United States. Oh, and here comes the Prime Minister of it. No.
A handshake or the lack of a handshake can have us talking for weeks and weeks and weeks, even the BBC and the New York Times. So obviously, when we think about nonverbal behavior or body language,
You can keep going for a little while longer.
what we call it nonverbals as social scientists, it's language. So we think about communication. When we think about communication, we think about interactions. So what is your body language communicating to me? What's mine communicating to you? And there's a lot of reason to believe that this is a valid way to look at this. So social scientists have spent a lot of time looking at the effects of our body language or other people's body language on judgments. And we make sweeping judgments and inferences from body language. And those judgments can predict really meaningful life outcomes like who we hire or promote, who we ask out on a date. For example, Nalini Ambady, a researcher at Tufts University, shows that when people watch 30-second soundless clips of real physician-patient interactions, their judgments of the physician's niceness predict whether or not that physician will be sued. So it doesn't have to do so much with whether or not that physician was incompetent, but do we like that person and how they interacted? Even more dramatic, Alex Todorov at Princeton has shown us that judgments of political candidates' faces in just 1 second predict 70% of US Senate and gubernatorial race outcomes. And even, let's go digital, emoticons used well in online negotiations can lead you to claim more value from that negotiation. If you use them poorly, bad idea, right? So when we think of nonverbals, we think of how we judge others, how they judge us, and what the outcomes are. We tend to forget, though, the other audience that's influenced by our nonverbals, and that's ourselves. We are also influenced by our nonverbals, our thoughts and our feelings and our physiology. So what nonverbals am I talking about? I'm a social psychologist. I study prejudice, and I teach at a competitive business school. So it was inevitable that I would become interested in power dynamics. I became especially interested in nonverbal expressions of power and dominance. And what are nonverbal expressions of power and dominance? Well, this is what they are. So in the animal kingdom, they are about expanding. So you make yourself big, you stretch out, you take up space, you're basically opening up. It's about opening up. And this is true across the animal kingdom. It's not just limited to primates, and humans do the same thing. So they do this both when they have power sort of chronically, and also when they're feeling powerful in the moment. And this one is especially interesting because it really shows us how universal and old these expressions of power are. This expression, which is known as pride, Jessica Traci has studied, she shows that people who are born with sight and people who are congenitally blind do this when they win at a physical competition. So when they cross the finish line and they've won, it doesn't matter if they've never seen anyone do it, they do this. So the arms up in the V, the chin is slightly lifted. What do we do when we feel powerless? We do exactly the opposite. We close up, we wrap ourselves up, we make ourselves small. We don't want to bump into the person next to us. So again, both animals and humans do the same thing. And this is what happens when you put together high and low power. So what we tend to do when it comes to power is that we complement the other's nonverbals. So if someone's being really powerful with us, we tend to make ourselves smaller. We don't mirror them, we do the opposite of them. So I'm watching this behavior in the classroom, and what do I notice? I notice that MBA students really exhibit the full range of power nonverbals. So you have people who are like caricatures of alphas, like really coming into the room. They get right into the middle of the room before class even starts, like they really want to occupy space. When they sit down, they're sort of spread out. They raise their hands like this. You have other people who are virtually collapsing when they come in. As soon as they come in, you see it. You see it on their faces and their bodies, and they sit in their chair and they make themselves tiny, and they go like this when they raise their hand. I noticed a couple things about this. One, you're not going to be surprised. It seems to be related to gender. So women are much more likely to do this kind of thing than men. Women feel chronically less powerful than men, so this is not surprising. But the other thing I noticed is that it also seemed to be related to the extent to which the students were participating and how well they were participating. And this is really important in the MBA classroom because participation counts for half the grade.
We're going to stop here. Thank you so much, Aisha, for sharing that. So, thank you so much. So, this course is not going to prepare you to be a TED Talk speaker. We're not going to go that epic. But what it did do was to think about what are some of the things that you notice when other people are presenting, right? What are some of the things that Amy did that can serve potentially as best practices for you when you are presenting? Feel free to come off mute, put in the chat, whatever you want to do. What are some of the things that Amy did well that you can use as a best practice when presenting?
I think this is Wendy. I am
Hi, Wendy.
John's. I believe that one of the things she did well was kind of pacing back and forth and using her hands. So not staying in the same area of the stage for the entire TED Talk.
Right. So she used the space in which she was allotted, right? So she was able to move back and forth and create these natural ways to engage by using her hands and all of those things. Awesome. Thank you for that. I see I see in the chat they agree with you. You started the interaction by getting the audience attention, by calling them into action. It's a great one. Yeah, she engaged them right away. She pulled them right in, and she paid attention to even how she was standing, if you notice. She paid attention to her posture, and she encouraged other people to pay attention to their posture as well. She smiled a lot. Absolutely. Smiling is a way to let people know that you are asserting not only your authority in the moment, but you feel confident in what you're going to deliver. So you're paying attention, you're using humor, you're using good eye contact. She made it more of a conversation. Absolutely. She used no script. She had good confidence. She stood up. She asserted. She did exactly what she told you that other people do when they're exhibiting dominance, right? She was open. She was there. She also didn't give away a life hack immediately. She was able to pull people in. And those are things you can do. When you're doing a great presentation, when you're starting a presentation, start with something impactful. Start with something that'll get their attention, be it a statistic, be it a story, whatever it is, you command attention from the beginning, right? Even the best speakers in the world can become better. Do you have any constructive criticism that maybe you would give Amy? I'll give you a clue. It was one of the feelings that came up for us in the beginning when you thought about presenting. What feedback would you give to Amy? Did you notice that she used filler words? She sounded nervous and breathy. Yes, I see it, Maria. She said and multiple times, right? Sometimes when you say our it is just the natural way in which you speak every day. And we don't often notice how many times we use or right? Maybe she was nervous, right? Maybe that breath was just a part of like, I don't know about you, but when I'm speaking and I'm nervous, my heart rate speeds up and it becomes a little harder to breathe. But when I've practiced, when I've stood and really focused on this presentation, even before I have to deliver it, I have to control the fact that I am the expert in that moment. People come to listen to you present because they want to learn from you. You have something to give them, and they want to see and hear the best of you. And ahs or ums are okay. But if they become a focal point, if they impact your body language. I've presented and seen presentations several times where people odd and ummed and their body posture was low and their shoulders were low. And it didn't make them step into the space of being the expert. But know that when you are conscious, aware, you've practiced, you've looked at who your audience is, you've paid attention, you're using humor, and you're bringing yourself into it, people will pay attention and they will learn from you. Amy mentioned that people judge us by our body language. What type of body language, in addition to the smiling, might you use to make sure that you are resonating well with the audience? Remember, confident posture. I'm a person who speaks with my hands. So those arm gestures, I try not to use them so much because I'm practicing to not use them so much because they can be distracting as well. But used appropriately, right? She emphasized the things that she was saying just by doing this, right? By being able to hold up her hands, she maintained that eye contact. So those are things that you yourself can emulate or replicate when you are delivering information. Absolute. Dominant to show that you dominated the subject that you're presenting. When you're presenting, you are the expert. People want to learn from you. And when you show up in confidence and you show up in smiles, and you exude that confidence to other people, they will listen, they will be engaged, and they will be curious as well. Next slide. Great. So if you've had an opportunity to download those notes, this is a space in which you can actually start using them. So, and in your spare time, I encourage you to do some Google search and come up with some excellent public speaking tips beyond what we're going to talk about today. But we're going to give you some 10 impactful tips from Marjorie North. Marjorie North is a consultant for political candidates, physicians, and lawyers that runs this really small practice that specializes in public speaking and communication. She was previously the clinical director of speech and language pathology at Northeastern University. And at some point, she recognizes that nervousness is normal. I want to normalize for you that nervousness is normal. All people feel some type of physiologic reactions, pounding hearts, trembling hands, like I mentioned. I also started noticing, wow, there's a change in the temperature in the room. I don't know about you, but I'm like, is it warm in here? But remember, not associating those feelings with the sense that you'll perform poorly or make a fool of yourself. Some nerves are good. The adrenaline rush that makes you sweat makes you more alert and ready to give your best performance. It lets you see and look at the people in which you're presenting to in a way that lets you think about how you can engage them along the way. You can course correct. The best way to overcome anxiety is to prepare, prepare, and prepare. Feel confident in what you have prepared. Know what you want to convey. Take the time to go over your notes several times. Once you become comfortable with the material, practice again. Practice in front of an audience if you need to. You can even videotape yourself or get someone to critique your performance. Remember, Amy mentioned that power positioning, that people are raising their hands up. But remember that power positioning is a moment of confidence. And even when you don't feel confident, you can call in that confidence by really power posing or boosting those feelings to reduce your nervousness. I don't know how many of you over the years have watched Grey's Anatomy, but there's a character on there who actually is one of the physicians. And every time she's confronted with a challenge or something that she knows is going to challenge her skill or her ability, she stands like Superman. She lifts up her chest and she breathes in and out and she power poses because she knows that in that moment she's asserting her dominance and relying on her expertise. And you can do the same. Get to know your audience. Your speech is about them, not you. Before you get to creating your messages, know who it's intended for. Know what you'd like to convey. Learn as much about the people who may show up as possible. This will help you determine how you communicate, the words you choose, the level of information you should include, how you might want to organize it, and whether or not you want to create something motivational. Where do you want to put something motivational in? So for those of you who have an upcoming speaking opportunity, what are some of the things that you may want to know about your audience that will help you create your message? You can hit it in chat, remember, and you can come off mute. What are some of the things you might want to know about your audience? Age range, maybe, yeah. Depending on the topic, that may be important.
Hi, Tracy. This is Ty. I would say
Hi.
how much they know about the topic that I'm presenting. Because if they know anything in regards to the topic, it would be nice to share just so that we can touch base on that as well.
Right. Thank you for that. Sometimes you may not be able to know what they know about the topic, and it's important, but you may notice as you tune into your audience, you'll notice people who are shaking, who are doing this, who are saying, yeah, yeah, and encouraging you on. And those may be the people that will help you with the feelings that you may have. One time I did a presentation on brain development in adolescence. And I didn't know that someone in the room was a neurologist, right? But I saw her doing this, I saw her doing this. And I got to a place of being stuck because I got nervous. And I asked a question to invite people to speak back to me in order for me to work through my internal processes. And she stood right in the gap and filled in the gap. And it was a great presentation. And at the end, what she said to me was that she had never heard anyone explain it in the way that I had, and it was absolutely perfect. So I exceeded my own expectation, and those people can help you. Absolutely. Years of service, yeah, depending on what you're talking about, but depending on the topic, you may want to know the years of service. You also roles in the organization, that definitely will help to know whether or not you're trying to achieve buy-in, whether or not you're trying to achieve allyship, to move towards buy-in, to know who is important, who's involved, and who's engaged, and how they fit into a process. Those things are absolutely important. Being able to know that you are working with people who may want to convey the information even further. You may be presenting to people who want to take what you have presented and share it out with their teams. I imagine some of you may do that today with even what we're talking about today. But realizing that if you organize your material in the most effective way, you will establish your purpose, you will make sure that you convey what you want to convey, and you will meet those people, regardless of their roles or years of experience, exactly where they are in that moment. Creating a framework for your speech, writing it down, creating these general, this trainings in our training center has like a description and objectives. Being able to use that to know how to move through your ideas, your purpose, your points, and to make sure you grab people's attention. Remember earlier I said grabbing attention in the first 30 seconds. I remember when I worked in sexual health, I had to do a presentation to a organization of women whose specific role was to provide charity to organizations. The first thing I said to them was that I am 3 times more likely to test positive for HIV than any of you in this room, based on my race, culture, and ethnicity. So let's talk about it. I had them. After that presentation, not only did they come to our organization to begin a series of volunteership and programming, they also invested in us. That first 30 seconds is an eye catcher and an opportunity. Next slide. Keep focus on your audience, gauge their reactions, adjust your message, stay flexible. If you've prepared and set your presentation in a way that makes sense for you, you can know where to pivot, where to step back, to go forward, to change trajectory. Delivering a canned speech every time lets you know you'll lose their attention. People will come into a presentation and ask, maybe I've heard this before. Maybe I've heard this before, and eventually you may lose them. Or you may, if they've heard it before, you may confuse them. So it's important that as you're delivering presentations and speeches, that you are thinking in a way that speaks to know your topic well enough to know that you can pivot, you can change, and it's okay. I'm seeing that my internet connection is unstable. Just be patient with me. And if anything happens, I will be on top of it. So just know that. Let your personality come through. People showed up for you. They want to learn from you. You are the expert. You are the only person who knows what you're going to say. You're the only person who knows how you're going to present it. And they want to learn from you because you are important to them. If your personality shines through and your audience will trust what you say, then they can see you as a real person having a real experience. Do not be afraid to bring humanity into your presentations. And be kind with yourself and know that practice, practice, practice makes perfect. And know that people want to learn from you because of who you are. Don't be afraid to inject a funny anecdote in your presentation. You definitely will keep people laughing. That's one thing Amy saw and you showed for us. People laughed. She caught people laughing, right? We want to inject something that's funny, a personal touch, a story that may stand out. Understand this. Just know that you can do it. Now, I want you to think about a presentation that you've done in the past, something you've done in the future. I want you to think about coming up with something that's going to be humorous or engaging, because we're going to go later, and I'm going to ask you to think about that subject or the topic, and I want you to think of a way in which you can put something together in 30 or 60 seconds, or maybe 90 seconds, however long, to be able to talk about that thing in a way that practices some of these tips. Okay, we're not going to put you into that group now. I'm just giving you some advanced notification because I want you to as I'm presenting and giving you these tips, I want you to think about how you might share that funny thing within the larger group and feel confident doing so. So if you haven't already, pull out a piece of paper and just jot down a topic or two that may help you during that breakout group that we'll do in a little while. Okay. Next slide. Don't read, you have to. I don't know if you've ever been to a presentation and someone's head was down and they were doing like this. Maybe they had a binder or a piece of paper. It is totally acceptable to check your notes. It is totally acceptable to look at the notes that you've created for yourself in case you get stuck or you need to stop. But it's also important for you to maintain eye contact. Keep the focus on yourself and your message. That brief outline that you've created jogs your memory, it keeps you on task, but the audience doesn't know that you've skipped something because they don't know what to expect. Remember, your audience does not know what you know. This is your moment of being the expert. And this is an opportunity that even if you did miss something and maybe they noticed it, maybe someone in the room has the expertise, they can bring it to your attention and you can validate that as significant. Don't feel sorry or don't feel this feeling of like, oh, I missed that, because someone can pick it up. Or Q&As. During Q&As, you can bring things out that maybe you didn't mention before. So this is the question. Is it more important to keep you engaged as an audience or make sure that you don't miss an important detail?
Keep you engaged.
Absolutely. Keeping you engaged. I hope you're engaged now. But if you're not engaged, people are not engaged, miss details, even if you cover them. And you'll know who those people are, possibly during Q&A, possibly during the process of you open their mics. Sometimes they may be working, like some of you maybe are now, who are dual devicing, right? But it's not the one or two things that you may overlook by looking directly at your script. But unless you're a presenter at SpaceX who's talking about safety and preparing engineers for how to build a space station, your audience will be okay if they miss a thing or two. You can pick it back up later. You can answer it another time. And sometimes it's okay to forget it altogether. Amy Cuddy shared in her video and in her book Presence this nonverbal communication that carries most of the message as I'm doing this and paying attention to it myself. But good delivery doesn't call attention to itself, but instead conveys your ideas so clearly and without distraction. So use your voice, use your hands. Try to avoid those things that we do when we're nervous. Stay in your space of confidence and exertion of your body language. And remember, it's important for you to be you because you are the expert. So let me ask you this. By now, working in community health centers, you've heard people talk a lot. You've heard people say a lot. My question to you is, do you enjoy anyone starting a speech with, today I'm going to talk to you about, and introducing a topic in that way? Probably not. Most people don't. Most people, like I said, use a statistic, an anecdote, or quick short story, a quote, something that immediately that you are conveying to your audience, they will remember it. Even if they don't remember anything in the middle, they'll remember the beginning, they'll remember the end. I hope I didn't give you a rocky start this morning, but I also hope that if I did, that I will say something that makes your delivery of speaking and presenting easy, feel easier, and feel engaging for you. Next step, next slide, excuse me. Yes, thank you. So remember that audio visual is there as a support. One of the things that comes up for me often is that if you break the connection audio visual. Worrying that your computer will stop, make sure it's plugged in and maintain the charge. Worried that that the platform you're using to present from, Zoom, Teams, whatever you use, can break down in that moment. Recruit help. Have someone stand by, use pre-productions if you need to. Come into that space 30 minutes to an hour in advance. Talk it through with your team. I have my team online, as I mentioned earlier, Aisha and Caro. They are in control of the platform because it allows me to focus on what I want to say to you and what I want to communicate to you. Using audiovisual should always enhance or clarify your content. It also should help you capture and maintain your audience attention. But most importantly, having that team and that support pushing information out, you also don't have to worry about everything. That you have someone there for you who's in your corner and allied and aligned with you. So before we go to the next slide, I just want to check in and see if there's any curiosities that have come up for you or questions that have come up for you with these 10 tips for public speaking. I'm a mother of sons. I love silence. It's okay. I can live with it a lot. So
Would you repeat the question, please?
the question is as based on these 10 public speaking tips that I've just provided for you, are there any questions or curiosities that have come up for you for your own experiences?
I found all these tips very useful. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Mhm.
But my problem is bigger when I have to do the Zoom presentation
Mhm.
because the frame is very small. It's harder for me to present when it's a Zoom like presentation rather than being in front of crowds or standing on a scene or a stage.
I hear that. Zoom presentations offer some level of psychological safety, or, they provide you an opportunity to be able to look at your notes in a way in which doesn't impact your delivery of information. So if I'm staring right now, I'm looking straight ahead, but I have a screen right here that has you in it, and I'm looking at the same slides you are, but I also have my outline to my right that lets me know that I can stay on track, that lets me know if I omit anything, and that reminds me that if I need to step back and stop, I can. So it's really about practicing. All of these things are about practicing. It's an opportunity. Zoom presentations allow you some level of security because even using a PowerPoint, you have those note spaces in the bottom of your screen that no one can see. So if you stop and reference your notes, it doesn't, your audience is less impacted by it than if you were in person. A lot of times, if you're staring at something physically in person, people are looking at you this way. In a Zoom format, if you have your technology is set up in a way in which you have the support you need on the pre-production end, right? Someone is maintaining the platform and you're focusing on the content, people can look at you this way and you can look at them this way, and they will never see that you are that you have tools that are helping you increase your confidence and maintain your presentations. So I would say practice. Use some time find a team member who's with you, who can support you, who you know is in your space, that can help you really deliver. And know that when you're delivering, you're the expert in that moment. No one knows what you're going to say. No one can anticipate what you're going to say. And you can pretty much, and as you practice more, you can kind of hide a little bit behind Zoom in ways that you wouldn't in person as well, because it's a little harder to look at your body language. especially if you happen to work mullet, which is, business in the top and comfort in the bottom. Is that helpful?
Thank you. It was very helpful.
Yeah, awesome. I saw a hand come up and go down. I want to just make sure I answered any question you may have.
Yes, Tracy, I just agree with whatever you just shared with Sarah. Yes, definitely presenting. There are pros and cons of presenting via Zoom as what you would do in person, right?
Mhm.
But with Zoom specifically, with COVID and everything happening, the challenge I had last time with presenting was that I didn't have any assistance. I had to do the entire 4-hour presentation on my own. So there was no support, and I ran into some technical issues during the presentation where I used 2 monitors and the actual presentation disappeared. So I started freaking out, you know.
Right.
But after a moment or so, I was able to bring it up. But during that brief 10-minute, or maybe it was not 10 minutes, like 5 minutes, you're literally freaking out, like, where did this presentation go? It's not a presentation which was new. I do it on a monthly basis, so I could still recall the slides, but it's just that, visually for the audience to kind of go along with the presentation, that was not there briefly, and that's where I felt the loss of the additional person who could help you with the technical issues, because as a presenter, your whole focus is to just make sure that you are training them on, the contracts and what they need as supervisor to function in their roles. So that was the challenge I had. And I actually have the same presentation that I would be doing next week, and like already stressing out about it because I don't have anybody to, assist me with it. But
Is it too late to recruit someone though? Is there someone who can maybe share the PowerPoint and it's on their computer and you could just focus 100% forward on the slides? Is it too
Yeah.
late to recruit someone to help you?
We do have an individual in that position, which is temporarily that person is staffing, but then they were like, hey, when I was hired into this position, I was told, like, I am not supposed to be assisting with all that. And I'm like, you're pretty much replacing the person who was doing this all for us, and now you're telling me that you're not. So that's a discussion I need to have with our HR director on it, because we normally present, like, both of us are co-presenters. So when he's presenting, I'm navigating the slides for him. But the last time he was not there, so I don't know the upcoming week whether he's going to be there. So just got to figure that out in the end.
Yes, I hear that. You know what? Have those conversations. There may be someone on your team who would benefit from the presentation and who has maybe even heard it before, who can come in and just share the screen for you, if nothing else.
Okay,
It is
thank you.
possible, right? It is possible that someone in your audience that has heard it before, that knows that they will benefit from, that they can, some people learn that way. So for example, in the role, sometimes when I'm in meetings and I really want to pay attention, but I know my style, I serve as the recorder of the meeting, or I take notes for the meeting because it helps me focus, right? So if there's someone who's heard it before, someone who may want to hear it again, someone who who would benefit from it but has not heard it before, see if they will help you, right? See if they recruit yourself and your support, excuse me, recruit yourself some support is what I'm trying to say. Recruit yourself some support in advance in order to let go of the angst of the technology. Technology sometimes will fail you. Right now, I just said to you that my internet sometimes is coming up as unstable. I know that even if I drop off, you will have Caro and Aisha that will keep you on this platform until I'm able to return. Because we've talked about it and we've planned for it. And for me, my role is to engage with you, to help you feel more confident, and to deliver information in a way that you can understand. And I hope that for you as well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anyone else has anything that's come up for them, any curiosities or questions that have come up for you? Okay, so we're good to move on to the next slide. So when taking on the role, I want to talk about the balancing act and the difference between presenting and facilitation. It's important when you take on the role as the presenter that you know more about the subject in which you're presenting than most of your audience. Therefore, presenting is really around imparting knowledge, right? So when you're taking on the facilitator, you're drawing knowledge out. It's not your knowledge, it's not your opinions, it's the knowledge and opinions of the rest of the group that matters the most. So when you're thinking about presenting or teaching, or you are not facilitating. Presenting is what you know about a topic, how you can impart that information to others, and to utilize and present in a way that not only imparts knowledge, but helps people to think about how they themselves can use it. When you're facilitating, you're assessing where they're coming from. You're taking in the knowledge of your audience. You're engaging them in a way that makes them feel included in the process, right? So one is imparting and one is drawing out. And there are two different edges of a spectrum, right? So the downfall of only focusing on presenting is that the audience doesn't learn from one another, or that you may zone out if you only hear your voice, right? Which is why people talk that when you go into Zoom meetings and people talk about camera use and we'd love to see it on. It's really, I could sit here and I could just give you a script, right? Time may feel like it slows down. Your experience level may not be of a certain quality, but the downfall of only facilitating is that the knowledge that you've possessed or acquired along the way won't be shared. You'll have less impact over the content, and you'll be so focused on other people that you may lose it. So when delivering a workshop, and in most situations, it's ideal to create an impactful balance between presenting and facilitating. Right? So it's important for you to think as you're structuring your outline and your key points, am I presenting in this moment or am I facilitating in this moment? Right? And to know which is which, most importantly. So we're going to show you another video of someone doing a class presentation that doesn't land well at all. He doesn't follow many of those 10-point tips we talked about. While watching the video, I want you to take note of what didn't go so well for this gentleman. And we'll brainstorm together afterwards. Aisha, you ready to start?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Public Speaking. Today's first presenter is Ranjit, and I would ask everyone to give him their full attention. Chantal, could you dim the lights, please?
The British imposed a lot of unpopular taxes on the American colonists and didn't let them elect representatives to the British government. In retaliation, the Americans started to boycott British goods. In 1773, Americans in Massachusetts dumped a shipload of British tea into Boston Harbor. This became known as the Boston Tea Party. As punishment, the British imposed laws known as the Intolerable Acts. including the Quartering Act, which made Americans let British soldiers live in their homes. Some of the American colonies created a Declaration of Rights and Grievances, which they sent to Britain, but the British just sent soldiers to the colonies to put down any rebellion. This led to the first battles of the Revolution at Lexington and Concord.
Thank you, Ranjit.
So, I want you to open your mics or post in the chat any skills that you think would help Ranjit become more confident in his presentation. More preparation, engage in the audience. He didn't have to read, fixing his posture, practicing his speech, more personality. Awesome. Silence the phone. Yeah, a lot of people don't catch the phone. So you were really paying attention, Melissa. Thank you for that. Don't look at the notes, more eye contact. Right. Facing the audience, absolutely. Making a dry, interactive, a joke for relief, starting with the icebreaker, short introduction. I see that. Absolutely. More engagement. Thank you for that. So yes, increased volume, facing the audience, not reading from his notes, but being able to make eye contact. Remember earlier I said sometimes if you're reading in person, people are looking at you like this, right? From that perspective. Use a personalized story or anecdote or statistic to build that connection, right? Silence technology. Yeah, don't be shy, with more confidence. With confidence, practice is a result of confidence. Confidence is the result of practice. Yes, that's what I said. I said it right. You will hear me say it. Practice, practice, practice. Because the more you practice, you're building confidence in the topic. As you feel more confident in the topic, you will feel better to communicate the topic even further, right? Remember, make things interactive, make things work for you. Sometimes in a training or in a speech or a presentation, depending on what you're presenting and why you're presenting it, you can trust your audience to even carry it forward for you. So I'm going to invite us to resume, and then I want you to stop, Aisha, at 3 minutes and 4 seconds, and we'll check in really quickly.
I know it's very hard to give a presentation in front of the entire class. Now, would anyone like to offer Ranjit constructive feedback about his presentation? Any tips for what he might do differently next time? For example, were you all able to hear what Ranjit was saying?
Not really. He needs to speak louder and face the audience.
Yes. Great suggestion. Anyone else?
He was reading from his paper, so it didn't feel like he was really talking to us, you know?
Exactly. It's important when you're speaking to look up every sentence or two and make eye contact with someone in the audience. Anything else that Ranjit could do to appear more relaxed and feel more confident?
He could smile more.
Yes, smiling makes us feel relaxed. Oh, and make sure your phone is off before you speak next time. I do have one more suggestion. To connect with listeners, it's a great idea to use a personal story or experience as an example. Can you try that next time?
I think so, yes. Next week, my presentation will be about the causes and effects of stress.
We look forward to hearing it. Ranjit is first up again today, and I look forward to his new presentation. Jorge, could you dim the lights, please?
Good morning. Today I'd like to talk about the causes and effects of stress and how to cope with stress. Stress has many causes, including work or school, life events, changes, or unrealistic expectations of yourself. Some effects of stress include headaches, trouble sleeping, depression, or lack of concentration. I know how hard it can be to deal with stress. Last year, I started working after school to save for college, but I didn't have time to do homework and my grades went down. I had trouble sleeping, I only ate junk food, and I stopped hanging out with my friends. Fortunately, I was able to talk with a school counselor to manage my stress. She suggested that I reduce my hours at my job, eat healthy foods, and get some exercise. So I literally started walking home from school and bringing my lunch. I also asked my teachers for extra help. Now, I feel better. It's important to recognize when you're stressed and to ask for help. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Aisha. So you now know how Ranjit did on his next presentation. I want you to acknowledge the commonalities and difference to what we talked about. His volume changed, his eye contact changed, he used a personal story, he was much more open, people were looking at him and not this. He may have had that outline in his hand, but he didn't reference it very much because he built his confidence in the topic because he practiced and practiced, right? Are there any thoughts you have about Ranjit's experience or how this can even be yours experience? So we go to the next slide. Thank you for that. I hope you see the difference, the distinct difference in what happens within that the change and implementation of just those moments of tips that we talked about a little while ago. So we're going to do an exercise and we're going to talk about these facilitation. He took that feedback from the previous presentation and worked it out for the next one. He exuded more confidence. He was less shy. He shared a story that impacted him directly. And he also made sure that people had that moment of laughter there, right? So people learned, they were engaged, and he was able to communicate very well. So, and you can too. Just know that you can. So let's talk about facilitation techniques. I want to put you into, let me look and see if we want to do this. So I want to put up for a vote. Do you want to take a break? Maybe for 5 minutes or so? Or would you like to just push forward, go into the activity, and potentially end a little early?
Can we take a break? I have to run to the restroom really quick.
Sure.
I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Okay, so let's take a 5-minute break here. We're going to, according to my watch, it's 10:08, well, 10:09. So we'll come back at 14 minutes after. We'll run through some facilitation techniques and we'll do an activity. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll feel free to step away and we'll be right back at 14 minutes after. All right. Thank you so much. I see that we're back in and recording has started again. I hope you were able to practice some self-care in that brief time. And even if we end a little early, I definitely encourage you not to jump back into work immediately, but to definitely take time to take care of you because each and every one of you works in community health centers. You spend a great deal of time making sure that everyone is well, and we want to make sure that you are well also. Right? So remember earlier we talked about the difference between facilitation and presentations. Presentations impart knowledge while facilitation draws out that knowledge. What do you think are some of the ways in which I know that you each may have facilitated in the past. What are some of the ways that would, as you see these 3 techniques of facilitation on your screen, What could it look like to implement one of these threes? We'll talk about them. We'll talk about them individually in a minute, but just based on your current understanding, what could it look like to implement one of the three things you see? Ask the audience questions. I see that. Warm welcome. Okay, so how about this? Warm welcoming, modeling the behavior in which you want to see. Show appreciation for people's participation. Because remember, when you're facilitating, you're drawing information out. Actually request solid answers or commend those solid answers by using questions strategically. Consider creating agreements that set the climate, right? So when the beginning of our training today, I talked to you about being able to create a space for psychological safety and for your learning, right? Those also includes being able to understand that while you're setting a climate, you're also asking people to be respectful. So one of the agreements that our organization uses for every meeting is to consider, why are you talking or why aren't you talking, right? Or the acronym WAIT. Or to be able to make sure that you, as you're facilitating, you're creating an inclusive space by engaging everyone, which is that second point up there, right? So how are you tactfully encouraging people to step aside so you can hear diverse voices and perspective? How are you developing awareness to barriers for learning, right? And barriers for learning could be the words that we use, maybe too technical. Barriers for learning could be the volume or intensity of the environment that you're trying to facilitate in, but it could also be not holding various point of views or perspectives in your hand as you're having these critical conversations. As you are facilitating, you're leading a process. So it's important for you to learn how to tactfully bring closure to a dialogue, to redirect or reframe someone who's overly talkative. I know you've all been in the meetings where someone who's extroverted has no problem sharing their opinion, but how do you redirect or reframe them in order to ensure that other voices are heard? And you can solicit those thoughts or feedback from someone who may not be as inclined to share. What does it take for them to share? Maybe if you know them and you notice that that is their pattern, what might you incorporate into the meeting in the moment, or that can help them feel the safety to share their truths? It's important to get people talking early. If you're facilitating a process, it's important to get people to talk and in the very beginning to reduce nervousness, increase comfort, and really rely into that group setting. I know you all work in environments where things happen, people come in, people are leaving, people are having appointments, and all of these things are happening. Some phone calls are happening. All these things are happening in these intensive ways sometimes that can interrupt your meetings, the way you facilitate. People are standing up, walking out, and coming back in. But realize that there is opportunities to be able to create environments that not only create successful moments of facilitation for you, but for them. Pay attention to the environment. Maybe you need to move that meeting into a different environment, moving it upstairs versus being down on the clinic floor, moving it in, and sometimes if you want to have a conversation or facilitate a dialogue between two people, sometimes taking it outside, right? Sometimes taking it outside. Don't be afraid to go for a walk with your colleague, to have those questions and those moments and those interactive. Even if you notice something in the course of a meeting and you may not be able to address it right then, you can debrief in this way that allows people to know that you saw them and you're curious about their experience. And you can take those experiences to your next meeting to ensure that you have the expertise and the perspective of that person who may not share as much. Also ask follow-up questions. Encourage people to add their reactions to build on comments. Sometimes if you feel a little weak in something, you can, or the answer won't come to you right away, you can ask people what they would do. Ask people for their experience. You don't have, when you're facilitating, you don't have to be the expert in the room, but it's important for you to think about the experience of others and how you can utilize that in the moment. Next slide. So I want you to take this piece of paper that you pulled out before. Remember, I talked to you about pulling out that piece of paper a little earlier and thinking about something that you would want to share in the group or are willing to share in the group. I want you to find a space on it, and I want to give you 2 minutes of free handwriting to brainstorm. Make a list of all the qualities you believe make an amazing facilitator. What are the qualities that an amazing facilitator possesses? I want you to just brainstorm it out, write out whatever comes to mind. And then I'll check back in with you in about 2 minutes. If you are using, if you're using the handout we provided you earlier, there's a space on page 4 of this notes page to brainstorm the qualities that you see. And we'll look at that list in a moment. All right. So in the chat, or take yourself off mute, I want to see some of those things. What are some of the things that you have identified personally that you believe are excellent qualities of being an amazing facilitator? Patient, compassionate, empathic, humorous, present, knowledgeable, prepared. See that? Enjoys facilitating. That helps. Confidence, ability to speak openly, intelligent, cognizant of audience, passionate, curious, organized, gives an audience time to reflect, setting ground rules, right? Neutral engagement, to connect, relatable, open arms, summarizing thoughts, making activities fun and engaging, passion for the subject, open mind, welcoming personality, allowing people to share their experience, a big voice or clear speaking, bringing to pivot, right? Bringing audience back to the topic, active listening, eye contact, being more relaxed, moving around, confidence, knowledgeable. Thank you for these. Absolutely. As you go through that list and that list that you wrote down, I want you to put a check mark next to those things that you possess. Because remember, you are who you are and you are an expert. People want to learn from you, which is why they're asking you to facilitate or present. I want you to believe that you are as phenomenal as you are. And I want you to make a check mark next to those things that you possess, because those are the things that you can rely on in order to carry you through this work. And remember, you will always be the expert in those moments because you are the expert. And Graham Young, the author of How to Walk the Talk blog, developed this 14 keywords that I'm going to review for you. And we're going to talk about that. So engaging conversation versus presenting, absolutely. So knowing when to present, when to facilitate, positive attitude, non-judgmental, and grace and space. Give yourself the time to not always get it right. Okay? But know that even if you don't, it's okay. Right? I want you to think about these: humble, generous, patient, understanding, acceptive, right? Accepting, being inclusive and an encourager. These 14 qualities, having an engaging conversation instead of presenting, absolutely knowing the difference. I'm checking the chat. These, next slide. There they are. These are the 14. Being able to to know those qualities of when you are being an amazing facilitator and how they're showing up in the moment. Being generous, being dynamic, being a motivator, but also being a listener. It is very hard to motivate an audience if you have not heard what they have said. If you not only heard it, but can respond to it and can give yourself the grace to be able to respond to it in a way that keeps people engaged and keeps them coming back. Absolutely. So we're going to go into a breakout. We're going to put you into breakout rooms. You're going to be in breakout rooms with at least teams of 4. I want you to choose one person or 2 people to speak. Decide who goes first. I want you to think about these qualities. I want you to think about those 10 strategies that we discussed earlier. And I want you to tell your story. Tell your story in a way that allows people to assess to give you feedback in the moment about their experience of your story. It is okay to be confident. It is okay to be humorous. It is okay to be generous in your story. But we're going to put you into the breakout rooms, and I want you to take that topic that you chose a little while ago, and I want you to tell the story to the group. Once you tell the story to the group, we will come back. You will have some feedback from that group, and we'll make sure to get you out of here in enough time to practice some self-care. Are there any questions about the activity before you go into the breakout rooms?
How long will each person have to share their story?
The group will have 10 minutes total, so I would say to prepare to speak no longer than 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. This should be fun. This should challenge you to be fun, to have a great experience, and to receive some feedback that hopefully will help you grow. Okay? So with that being said, I'm going to invite Caro, my colleague, to open those breakout rooms. And please watch for the prompt on your screen. If you have any challenges, just open your mics and we'll make sure that you get into the space. Okay? Caro, we're ready when you are. Come back. Does everyone want a little more time? I know sometimes I try to make sure that we have enough time for you to have the most impact and to be able to help share with your colleagues in that room. How's that go for you? All right. So can someone tell me what you learned about yourself or maybe the feedback that you experienced?
Hi, this is Araceli from Central City. That we're not alone, that I'm not alone when it comes to being nervous and worried about, whether it's a presentation, saying feeling stuck. So in some ways, it feels good to know that I'm not alone and that this with practice can get better. So thank you to my team. It was really good to hear from them as well. Thank you, Tracy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Araceli. Anyone else like to share?
Yeah, I was wonder I guess I noticed that it also depends on culture and where one comes from. So as each of us was sharing our stories or past presentations, we had a conversation about how in California, like a lot of the culture is to have conversations with like and even in just conversation. So it's interesting to see how like that culture can relate if you're presenting somewhere probably in like, I don't know, Arkansas or like Alabama and just the difference in how they speak in terms of culture.
Absolutely. Culture plays an important part. Some cultures are, it is for, in some cultures, it's very hard for them to initiate conversation. And they need the time to prepare and uh, to really think about what they want to say. Also, especially if English is not your first language, we want to be respectful of the fact that it adds a layer of stress to be able to communicate ideas in a way that supersedes that language divide, right? That pushes people beyond that language divide. But know that you are the expert in that moment. I'm going to keep reinforcing that because sometimes that is the hardest thing for us to take in as well, that we sometimes don't see ourselves as experts, but you absolutely are. You absolutely are. All right. Because you know something your audience doesn't know, because your audience is learning not only from you, but from everyone around them. So when you're facilitating, you're enabling people to teach each other in a way that shows that you're being patient and understanding with them, but also that you're listening to them as well. So I hope that was helpful for you to think about areas in which you can improve and areas in which you're really good. And I hope that you chose something that allows you to grow from, a space for you to grow from. Okay. So let's go on to our next slides and then we'll just close it out. I want to say something about PowerPoints. PowerPoints should be your accompaniment. I don't know about you, but when I go into a meeting or into a training and someone is reading exactly from the screen, exactly what is written on that PowerPoint, I immediately disengage. They should be a way to attract attention, a way for people to find out information that maybe you don't say, and they should not distract from your presentation, right? PowerPoint should contain key notes. You notice I don't have a lot of paragraphs in this presentation. That's because you don't need them. This is your outline, and points from your outline can be your PowerPoint, right? Because what you say is more important, and that PowerPoint should not be a distraction. So when you think about the presenter in the failure that he had earlier, think about how his PowerPoint could have been much more shape. If he had focused, if he had a PowerPoint, it would have probably much more in shape and much more in focus. Remember that that there is a checklist, an effective PowerPoint checklist that we will include in your post-training communication that goes into details around how to be more visually attractive and how to make it easier to read or non-distracting. But just know that PowerPoint should not tell people word for word what to expect. They're just an accompaniment to make your presentation even stronger. Next slide. There are also, depending on the technology you use, there are some alternatives to PowerPoint that you can use to increase engagement. Sometimes your companies may have these pre-designed templates that you can easily modify. Sometimes there's these places that may cost a fee or a subscription or a download, such as Canva or Prezi, but they often create these visually stimulating templates that you can use if you have the ability based on your organizational rules. And it also provides you spaces to be able to create much more connections. So for example, with Mentimeter, we sometimes use in our organization. It's a way to create those word clouds, right? So when you've gone to presentations and people have gone into a website and they've answered the question, and then that pops up on your screen, and you notice that as words are popping up on the screen, they vary in size based on the number of times they're mentioned. All of those are external tools that you can embed into your PowerPoints to create more stimulating conversations and presentations. Canva is one of the tools that I use because it provides pre-populated templates that you can just plug into that are stimulating formats. You can take part, when you're using Mentimeter, you can take part. People can log in from their cell phones that are probably right next to their hands, right next to the mouse, and be able to participate in the conversation with you and get an idea of how people feel about those topics, right? Google Slides, it's a one size fits all. So if you've never used Google Slides, it's that one size fits all. It looks just like PowerPoint, has many of the same information as PowerPoint or uses PowerPoint, but it is a way to exchange that PowerPoint as you're developing it with other Google users because it's a web-based presentation platform. And its greatest strength is that if you don't have access to the Microsoft Office suite, but you have access to Google, people are very familiar with the interface. So you're not harming anyone if you need to switch, or creating barriers for anyone if you need to switch to that product. Okay. There's so many tools that you can use as an alternative to a PowerPoint. Sometimes the best speeches in the world do not even use them. Sometimes the best presentations in the world do not even bother with a PowerPoint, and that is equally impactful. Next slide. Another important aspect of delivering a workshop is when you're presenting or delivering a workshop like I have today, is to set up to think about what happens in advance. So these are the 4 key areas to think through when you're preparing. Do you have a checklist? I'm going to provide you with a sample of a checklist called a logistics management checklist. That checklist gives you space to think about the environment, the volume, whether or not you want to provide catering, whether or not you require assistance with equipment, things of that nature that you may not instinctively come to you, but can be used as an aid as you're preparing in advance. The handout may be a reference for you. It also may enhance a checklist that maybe you already have in your organization, or a process that you already have in the organization. And remember that we want to make sure that everything is easy to read, that it appears professional, that everything is good quality, and when you're printing handouts. And so it's important for you to include that as a part of your logistics management as well. Next slide. And finally, some final last minute strategies to help you in the virtual space. I know we mentioned the virtual space a little earlier. Make a plan and stick to it. Remember, it's about planning and pulling off a great meeting or presentation that requires advanced organization and preparation. Practice, practice, practice. As you plan to ensure that everyone understands your purpose, that you're clear on the points you want to make and in what order, don't forget to take the time for you to feel confident, and confidence becomes as a result of practice. Remember, there may be spaces where you can take risks and adjust time or even pivot based on your audience, but know what you want to convey it, and do it, and be prepared to pivot if necessary. When you're developing an inclusive agenda, you're creating agendas that consider various learning styles. You're providing objectives, or intended outcomes of the meeting. You're spelling out expectations of what will happen and when it will happen. You're supporting people to be more attentive because they know when things are going to happen, or to even come prepared. If you're providing those agendas in advance, people can come prepared with their questions, their curiosities, or concerns. Leave room for flexibility. Let people know when you're answering questions, when you might be doing breakout activities, or even make up backup plans if you find that you're talking to a bunch of people who may not work back with you or connect back with you. As I mentioned earlier, invest in production. Find out those people who are attending the meeting but may be able to help you with technology because maybe they've heard it before, or whose expertise in the technology makes you feel secure in your ability to have the meeting. Focus on delivery. Focus on content delivery. Focus on engagement while someone else is focused on the platform. And remember to use accessibility features. So for example, in the bottom of your screen in PowerPoint, someone could have turned on the actual accessibility feature of having closed caption. That is always an option. Make sure that option exists. One warning though, there's also a button around including AI notes, because sometimes people want to come to the meeting, turn on the notes, and follow up with it later and not really pay attention. The challenge with AI notes is that they're not always accurate, and they will attribute names to things that are stated. It is not always accurate. So if you're willing to risk inaccurate information being shared with names, then you can use an AI note taker. I don't encourage its use because I don't believe in pushing out products that are inaccurate. I don't believe in sharing information that may not be accurate. And I don't want to assume through technology that someone said something that they did not say. So please use AI notes sparingly. And if you want to try it internally and see how it works for you. Remember group agreements. If you create these psychological safety spaces, make people know what the rules of engagement are. Help people be aware of the impact that they're having, make room for that diverse voice or perspective, be able to use those agreements to encourage people to consider why they aren't talking or why they are talking. Use it as your guide to refer back to when you need to course correct or redirect people. And remember that those are there not only for them, for your audience to create a psychologically safe space, but it is for you to guide it and use it as a tool for you as well. Though I talked to you about using icebreakers, warm-ups, all those things, use them sparingly. I know some of you that went in that breakout room may have felt on the spot in the moment, and you may not have felt safe to respond or connect. But know that sometimes when people are put in that space, they don't respond, and that is just who they are, and that's how they operate in the world, and that is okay. Depending on the type of meeting, someone may have sent their assistant. They may not have enough context to present. They may not have enough context to share. But remember, active listening is what boosts engagement. Responding to what people need in the moment, because it's easier to learn to listen to one person for a short amount of time. But having people connect with one another allows engagement, allows cross-learning, and supports you as a facilitator to not be the only voice in the room. And finally, I have committed to sending you materials at the end of this meeting. And my job after this is to follow up and follow through. Communicating afterwards to make sure people have implementable tools, to have resources, or anything that you've promised for them in the course of the session. Next slide. So, are there any questions or curiosities that linger for you? No, I see a thank you.
Not a curiosity, just wanted to say thank you, Tracy. This is Araceli again. I appreciate your presentation. I know that we've had the honor of you coming out to my site and doing a presentation as well. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, Tracy.
Absolutely. I love presenting in clinics. I love presenting in your health centers because it lets me know who you are. And also to congratulate you for showing up every day because you all take care of my community and take care of me. So I appreciate you for who you are. I see your gifts and your talents. And I want to make sure that anything that I can share of you that helps you feel so much better prepared to present or otherwise, I definitely will. I appreciate you. And I invite you to please, please, please stay online. I'm going to close this session. And when I do, an evaluation will pop up of your experience. I always revert backwards and make changes based on what I learned, which is another tip for you as well. So stay online, complete those evaluations. I will be reading them and I will be following up with you with a copy of this presentation, access to the recording, and those handouts that I mentioned. I thank you all for being my audience this morning, and I thank you for showing up every day. You have a wonderful rest of your day and take care of you while you're taking care of everyone else. Have a great one. This is the end. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.